Hidden in Plain Sight by Michaela Scott. A brief history. In 1905, the Salton Sea was developed when the Colorado River emptied into Lake Coachella. By 1929, people began to go there frequently for recreational purposes as its popularity slowly began to build. Actually, during this time, there were 5 speedboat records that were viewed, and that's kind of what caused it to become more popular. In the 1950s and 60s, it was the happening spot in Southern California, especially in the desert areas, as people began to go there frequently for boating, water skiing, and swimming. What they realized was that the higher salinity was good for boating because higher salinity creates more buoyancy in the boats. Little did they know that this once popular place would become extremely barren and desolate. It would also become a geothermal and seismic playground for scientists. So the Salton Sea resides in a transition of 2 different plates, the North American Pacific Plate boundary, which is between the strike slip of the San Andreas Fault and the north and divergent boundary in the Gulf of California. It is actually the place that has the highest storm activity in California due to its divergent tectonic setting. So these seismic swarms of earthquakes are due to a fault creep. So that means that there's a creep within the fault line because we have 2 different plates trying to come together, but they're pulling each other apart. And there's actually magmatic fluid that's being pushed up from this. So this is an area where I like to go hiking. It's about 20 minutes north, or actually 20 minutes south of the Salton Sea. It's of the North Salton Sea, sorry. All of these rock formations, to the naked eye, most people would say that this is just, water erosion, chemical weathering. But what they don't understand is that all of these different rock formations are actually residing on the San Andreas Fault and being pushed up. That's how this canyon was formed. It's called the Painted Canyon, the Mecca Canyon. I don't know if any of you have heard of that. But it's being pushed up by the actual fault line, which is why we have different forms of rocks. I've seen limestone, I've seen granite there, I've seen crystals there before. There's actually a lot of different crystals. So I figured that would be a good thing to put in here. Geothermal energy. Another big thing in this area that many people do not know is that there is a lot of geothermal energy, and an example of that would be the Obsidian Buttes. So the Obsidian Buttes were submerged, sorry, let me grab this. The Obsidian Buttes were submerged under Lake Coachella in what we now know as the Salton Sea. So this area alone shows evidence that it was all underwater at one point. The buttes were formed by seismic activity where the earth is forming new oceanic crusts and pushing magma up onto the surface. There's also a lot of geothermal energy there, which we have water plants out there, and we use that geothermal energy to power the plants. And there are actual magma chambers residing underneath the Salton Sea Trough, which many people do not know. There's also mud volcanoes over there, and these volcanoes are formed from the magma and also from the seismic activity. So it's kind of an area where seismic activity meets geothermal energy and creates this crazy, just raw energy of different forms. This is actually an example. I went to the Obsidian Butte not that long ago, and I picked up some rocks. So this is an example of a rock that is formed by magma. So my question is this a hazardous or not hazardous area? So because there are 2 different plate boundaries in this area, what many don't know is that it literally is splitting California apart in that specific area. That's why they call it the Salton Sea Trough, and that's in reference to the creep in the fault lines, which is what's pushing up the magma and creating a new oceanic crust. Another issue with this is that these seismic swarms, a lot of scientists are afraid that because they are very sporadic in how they move, that they could trigger the San Andreas at some point if they move in the wrong direction, even though they are not fully connected. So, and with the geothermal energy and the hazard behind it with magmatic activity is that underneath the Salton Sea trough, there's so much going on underneath there. And since there's a creep in these plates and it's pushing up this magma, it could actually cause a volcanic eruption, which many don't know. That's what I was referring to when I talked about the mud volcanoes. So there was an eruption that occurred like I think it was 640 BC from, if I remember from my research, that burst. And what scientists are worried about is that this larger eruption at one point could be triggered by the seismic activity, and that it could emit a lot of ash and harsh gases, which could travel into the Coachella Valley, which is actually where I live now. So there's a lot of things in this area that no one knows about, and it kind of goes unheard of. The only thing that we really focus on are earthquakes, but there's actually way more hazardous things that could occur. Hence why I called my project Hidden in Plain Sight, because it's a valley that most people know for, its old history of the Salton Sea, Palm Springs, Coachella Festival, but there's actually a lot of scientific occurrences here that nobody knows about. My sources cited. In conclusion, I would like to quote Charles Darwin. A bad earthquake at once destroys the oldest associations, the world, the very emblem of all that is solid, has moved beneath our feet like a crust over a fluid. 1 second of time has conveyed to the mind a strange idea of insecurity, which hours of reflection would have never created. Thank you.